Hello and welcome to the Intentional Brief, your weekly video update on the one big thing in cybersecurity news for middle market companies, their investors, and management teams. I'm your host, Shay Colson, managing partner at Intentional Cybersecurity. You can find us online at intentionalcyber.com. Today is Monday, June 1st, 2026, and at least as I'm recording this, the war in Iran continues and the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. This week, we're going to look at a bit of a nuanced area of cybersecurity that's focused on vulnerability research and responsible disclosure. Now, of course, regular watchers of the program will know that we've been covering this vulnerability topic quite extensively of late in the context of Mythos and other AI-driven tooling and their potential to really materially accelerate vulnerability discovery. But this week, however, we're going to focus on the public response from Microsoft to a rash of recently released Windows vulnerabilities. In a blog post last week, Microsoft talked about their coordinated vulnerability disclosure, claiming that recent, quote, vulnerabilities known as Red Sun, Undefend, Blue Hammer, Yellow Key, Green Plasma, and Mini Plasma were not responsibly disclosed. But more than this, Microsoft says a couple paragraphs later in the post that, quote, our digital crimes unit will continue bringing cases against these actors and those that enable their criminal activity, coordinating as needed with law enforcement around the world, end quote. This is, as you might imagine, drawing a bit of consternation, to say the least, from some in the security community. And Microsoft obviously does have a bit of reach with law enforcement agencies around the world and does appear here to be threatening to aim that relationship at researchers, one in particular here known as Nightmare Eclipse, who is behind many of these vulnerabilities. It's also important to remember that Microsoft owns GitHub, the largest source code repository on the planet and one where many of these vulnerability proof of concepts, or POCs, are stored and distributed, at least initially. To that end, Microsoft has kicked off Nightmare Eclipse from GitHub, and they've also had their reporting portal account disabled, making it hard, one would imagine, to comply with Microsoft's request in the future. But beyond that, the Microsoft strategy is interesting here, given that there's a near certainty that individual researchers are going to be able to generate these type of new high-impact zero-day vulnerabilities moving forward. In fact, Anthropic, when they released Opus 4.8 last week, noted that, quote, they expect to be able to bring Mythos-class models to all our customers in the coming weeks, end quote. So this is not a someday thing, this is a soon thing, and it is not a theory, it is coming. And so it's hard to read too much into the posturing from Microsoft, since even they are likely to be overwhelmed by the inbound volume in the very near future. And instead of finding ways to partner more closely with those discovering these vulnerabilities, they seem to be actively working against them. So I think the lesson here for all of us is one around communication and expectation. If people identify a security issue in your system, your software, your setup, what do you want them to do? If you want them to do something that looks at least the least bit like responsible disclosure, i.e. coming to you first before making it public, you're liable to catch more flies with honey, as they say. From a fundraising perspective, a nearly mirror week this week with $8.6 billion in newly committed capital, up from $8.4 billion last week. Some nuance has emerged around the payments to Anthropic as relates to the SpaceX IPO, but the numbers are so huge that it just feels like that old line from Whose Line Is It Anyway, where everything's made up and the points don't matter. As a reminder, you can find links to the articles we covered in the comment section below, back issues and written transcripts of these videos at intentionalcyber.com, and we will see you next week for another edition of the Intentional Brief.